You ever feel like you're just done with everyone? Like silence is safer than small talk. Like your own company might actually be the best company you've ever had. Wait, don't scroll. This isn't one of those love yourself pep talks you've heard 100 times. This is different. Because what if I told you, being alone isn't a weakness, it's a superpower. And the minute you stop being afraid of your own silence, your whole life starts to change. See, the world teaches us that being alone means being lonely. That if you're not surrounded by people, something must be wrong with you. But the truth, the real truth, being alone is where you meet yourself. It's where your thoughts become clear. Your intuition gets louder. Your energy stops leaking into people who were never meant to hold it. Being alone is not your punishment. It's your preparation. People always ask, how do I find clarity? How do I stop feeling stuck? How do I get stronger? You get quiet. You go inward. You sit with yourself. That's where the real answers live, not in the noise, not in the chaos, but in the quiet power of your own presence. You don't need everyone to get you. You don't need a room full of validation. Because when you know who you are alone, you stop begging the world to remind you. That's when the shift happens. That's when you stop chasing and start choosing. That's when peace becomes your default, not your destination. So don't fear solitude. Don't run from the silence. Use it. Build in it. Heal in it. Because once you realize how powerful you are on your own, you become unshakable. Because the truth is, silence isn't just the absence of sound. It's the presence of truth. It's the space where everything becomes clear. In the middle of the world shouting at what to wear, who to be, what to want, silence is the only place where you can actually hear yourself. Most people never stop long enough to notice that. They fill every minute with noise. Music, notifications, conversations, scrolling, consuming, talking, performing. But deep inside, there's a voice that's always been whispering, hey, this is who you really are. And the only way you'll hear it is when the world goes quiet. We've been taught that silence is uncomfortable, awkward even. That we always need to be on, always need to be in the loop. But that's not where your power lives. Your power lives in that still space between all the distractions. Because silence is where the pretending stops. When no one is watching, when there's nothing to perform for, nothing to prove, that's when you get honest with yourself, brutally honest. And it's in that raw honesty, maybe for the first time in your life, that you start to see what really matters to you. What you're actually feeling, what you've been running from, what you truly want, not what the world told you to want. And it's not always pretty. Sometimes when a silence settles in, it brings up everything you've been avoiding. Regrets, insecurities, grief. But that's not weakness. That's the start of your breakthrough. Because once you face it, you free it. You stop being a prisoner to what's unspoken. You bring it to light. You stop carrying emotional weight that was never yours to hold. And once you clear all that out, you make room for real clarity, room for truth, room for ideas and inspiration that are actually yours, not someone else's recycled opinions. You'll notice something else too. When you get quiet, your intuition gets louder, that gut feeling, that inner knowing. It sharpens. You begin to trust yourself in ways you never could before because you're no longer outsourcing your wisdom. You're no longer asking the world for answers it was never meant to give you. You're not looking outside of yourself. You're finally tuning in. And that's the thing most people never tell you. You can't truly know yourself when you're constantly surrounded by others. Because when you're always plugged into everyone else's energy, opinions, moods, and expectations, you start to blur the line between what's yours and what's theirs. You begin to mold yourself into who you think you need to be just to fit in, just to be accepted, just to keep the peace. But the version of you that was built for others isn't the real you. It's just a mask you wear to survive, and somewhere deep down, you know that. You feel it in your gut every time you smile when you don't mean it. Say yes when you want to scream no. Laugh at things that don't touch your soul. That's why solitude is sacred. Because in that quiet space where there's no one to impress, no one to entertain, no one to compare yourself to, you finally have the chance to meet the person underneath all those layers. You start hearing your real thoughts, not the ones shaped by what others think you should believe. You begin to understand your own rhythms, your triggers, your dreams, your fears. You stop editing yourself. You stop shrinking. You stop performing, and that's where the discovery happens. There's something powerful about waking up and realizing that who you are when nobody's watching is exactly who you've been trying to become all along. That peace you're chasing, that confidence, that sense of purpose. It's not out there. It's been inside you the entire time. You just needed enough space to uncover it, to dust it off, to own it. When you allow yourself to go deep, not just wide with more people, more voices, more chaos, you stop living reactively. You stop getting pulled in 100 directions. You stop needing constant approval just to feel okay. Instead, you move with intention. You speak with clarity. You choose your circle carefully because you know your value. You become the kind of person who doesn't just follow trends. You set them. Who doesn't just echo other people's truths. You live your own because you've done the inner work. You've sat with your shadows. You've asked yourself the hard questions that most people spend their whole lives avoiding. And here's something that needs to be said louder. Being alone is not the same thing as being lonely. That lie has been sold to us for so long, most people believe it without question. They think if you're not surrounded by people, if your phone's not blowing up with messages, if your calendar isn't packed with plans, then something must be wrong with you. But the truth is, some of the most connected people feel the most alone because they're constantly performing, constantly giving, constantly drained by relationships that look full but feel empty. See, loneliness doesn't come from being by yourself. Loneliness comes from being with people who don't see you, who don't hear you, who only love the version of you that benefits them. And once you realize that, everything changes because you stop chasing company just to fill space. You stop tolerating surface-level connections that feed your time but starve your soul. You start being intentional about the energy you allow into your life. There's something incredibly powerful that happens when you're alone and not aching to be somewhere else. When you're not scrolling to escape, not texting to distract, not pretending to be okay just to make someone else comfortable, you start to feel something deeper than noise. You feel peace. Kind of peace that doesn't need to be explained or defended. The kind that makes you realize you are enough, not because someone else said so, but because you felt it in your bones when the world went quiet. And that's when you begin to see solitude not as isolation, but as liberation. You're not running from connection, you're redefining it. You're teaching yourself how to enjoy your own presence so deeply that you'll never again accept a relationship, friendship, or situation that feels like a burden. You begin to realize that being alone gives you space to recharge, to reflect, and to reclaim parts of yourself that were lost in the noise of trying to belong. Because real belonging doesn't come from blending in, it comes from standing strong in who you are, even if that means standing alone sometimes. When you're truly comfortable in your own company, you become magnetic, not desperate, not needy. Just real, grounded, and powerful in a way that people can feel before you even speak. And when you start spending time alone, really alone, not just physically but mentally disconnected from the noise, you start to notice something. Your energy is precious. It's not unlimited. It's not for everyone. And when you've been constantly giving it away to people who drain you, disrespect you, or just don't appreciate your presence, you begin to feel exhausted in a way that rest alone can't fix. That's the kind of tired that comes from being over-available and underprotected. And you don't realize how badly it's affecting you until you finally pull back and sit with yourself for a while. Because when you're alone, you're not just getting quiet, you're reclaiming your energy. You're bringing it back to its source. You stop scattering it across people who never reciprocate. You stop leaking it into conversations that don't matter, relationships that don't feed your spirit, environments that constantly take but never pour back in. And suddenly you realize, not everyone deserves a seat at your table. Not everyone earns access to your mind, your emotions, your peace. You don't owe your presence to anyone who's made you feel like you're too much, or not enough, or only worthy when you're giving something. Being alone teaches you that your energy is not a currency to be traded for acceptance. It's a gift. And the more you treat it like one, the more you start attracting people who respect it. You stop over-explaining, you stop overcompensating, you stop dimming your light just so others can feel comfortable in your shine. And you realize that sometimes the best thing you can do for yourself is walk away, not out of anger, but out of alignment. You're allowed to choose peace over popularity. You're allowed to protect your energy, even if it makes other people uncomfortable. That's not selfish, that's self-aware. And being alone helps you build that awareness like nothing else can. It helps you tune into what energizes you, what drains you, what feels like love and what feels like control. It teaches you to become so full of your own power, your own peace, your own presence, that you no longer seek chaos just to feel alive. You stop confusing attention with affection. You stop confusing attachment with love. You start choosing alignment, intention, and authenticity above everything else. And something shifts deep inside you when you finally realize you don't need anyone to hold you up. You learn how to stand on your own 2 feet, and not just stand, but thrive. Because being alone doesn't weaken you. It strengthens you in ways that only solitude can. You begin to see that everything you thought you needed from other people, support, validation, comfort, you're actually capable of giving to yourself. You stop waiting for someone to rescue you, to heal you, to make you whole. Because the moment you embrace being alone, you discover that the strongest, most reliable foundation you'll ever have is you. Resilience doesn't come from always being surrounded. It doesn't grow in comfort or convenience. It's built in those quiet moments when you're staring down your own doubts, facing your own fears, and choosing to keep going anyway. That's the kind of strength that can't be taught. It has to be lived, and solitude forces you to live it. It's in the moments where you're hurting and there's no one around to distract you, where you either break or build. And when you choose to build, brick by brick, you come out the other side unshakable. You stop folding under pressure because you've already survived your own silence. You've already faced your shadows and proven to yourself that you don't need a crowd to feel worthy. You've shown yourself that you can sit in the discomfort, breathe through it, and emerge more grounded than ever. You realize that the strength you were looking for in others was inside you all along, waiting to be awakened. And as you keep walking through life, things that once shattered you now barely shake you. You've seen what you're made of. You've weathered storms without a hand to hold, and you didn't just survive, you evolved. You leveled up because you didn't crumble when things got quiet. You listened. You learned, you found stability in your own presence, so when life throws chaos your way again, and it will, you won't panic, you'll pause. You'll breathe. You'll return to that still place inside you where you learned how to be your own anchor. You'll remember that being alone didn't make you lonely, but it made you solid. And no one can take that kind of strength away from you. And there's this beautiful transformation that happens when you finally allow yourself to sit in the quiet long enough. You stop living by default and start living by design. You begin to notice that your choices aren't coming from pressure anymore. They're coming from alignment. That's what being alone gives you. The space to hear your own rhythm, your own values, your own definition of success. You're no longer reacting to what the world throws at you. You're responding with clarity, because now you've taken the time to understand what actually matters to you. You stop chasing what's trending and start honoring what's true. You no longer move just to be seen, you move because it feels right. Oh, that stillness you once feared becomes the foundation you build everything on. And suddenly, your decisions start coming from a deeper place. You say yes only when it feels aligned. You say no without guilt. You walk away from what doesn't serve you, not out of bitterness, but out of inner peace. When you get alone with your thoughts, really alone, you realize how much of your life has been shaped by noise, by outside voices, by expectations. But solitude wipes all that away and puts the mirror in front of you. And what you start to see isn't someone broken, lost, or behind. It's someone becoming whole, someone rising, someone stepping into their truth, slowly but powerfully. You stop needing everyone's opinion before making a move. You trust your gut, you trust your process. You even trust the silence because it's no longer empty. It's full of insight, full of self-respect, full of direction. You're not just existing anymore. You're choosing your life moment by moment. You're filtering out what drains you and moving toward what lights you up. You're no longer begging life to make sense. You're creating meaning from within. And even when things don't go as planned, even when life throws curveballs, you stay steady. Because you've built a life that reflects your soul, not your fears. That's what alignment does. It turns confusion into clarity. It turns wandering into walking with purpose. And that only happens when you've had the courage to be alone long enough to meet the real you. The one who's been waiting behind all the noise. The one who doesn't need approval to feel powerful. The one who leads from within. So yeah, maybe being alone isn't something to run from. Maybe it's the one thing that finally brings you home to yourself. Because once you get comfortable in your own space, your own energy, your own truth, everything starts to shift. The noise gets quieter. The pressure fades. And suddenly you're not looking for a place to fit in, you're building a life that fits you. And that kind of power. The kind that comes from within, that doesn't need permission, that doesn't flinch when things get hard, that's rare, that's sacred. So take your time. Protect your peace, and don't ever feel like you're falling behind just because you're walking your path solo. Sometimes the strongest move you can make is just choosing you.